Good evening, everyone. This is Reading for Charity again. Today's review is Deadhouse Gates, and you can tell what the more important bit about this book is. Because Deadhouse Gates is the little writing along the bottom, but Stephen Erickson in big letters. So you can tell what the bigger draw is. It's a Stephen Erickson book rather than a continuation of the series. This is going to be a very quick review, very quick review. Mostly because I realised when I was rehearsing this review in my head that I was getting confused a lot between Garments of the Moon, this book, there is and a couple of the later books which continues kind of like this story. There's so many of the Stephen Erickson books that kind of get twisted up in my head, mostly because I just realised this is very squint. I'll have to do. There's an awful lot of the Stephen Erickson books kind of get mashed together in my head because they are actually quite similar. That's one of my biggest problems with the Stephen Erickson books is when I think about something that's happened, I struggle to remember which book it happened in. Partly this is because there's a lot of the characters that crisscross paths through the different books. So the likes of Apsalar and Fiddler, Crocus, that bunch have all disappeared off from the main group, and Callum and the other ones I can't remember. They weave back in, throughout the kind of story of the throughout the books, and it makes it quite hard to remember what happened where at times. And it's I find that it's a big chunky book. It's almost 1,000 pages long, 960 pages. This one is, so it's a chunky book, and I find that it would have probably been better if it had been split into 2 or possibly even 3 books. I mean, there's 3 distinct kind of things going on. The stuff that Callum's doing, when they're kind of going through the Deadhouse Gates towards the first Empire City, the Chain of Dogs stuff with Dudekar, that's fantastic. That's my favourite bit of the book is the Chain of Dogs. I just really like the similar to the Black Company, where they have the long kind of withdrawal to the Tower of Charm. The Chain of Dogs is kind of along similar things. It's that constant kind of harrying and long journey. With there's not much that can be done, but just kind of accept your fate as you're getting there. I think the Chain of Dogs is the best bit in the book. And the third group, which is the I've now lost where I'm going with by talking about the other bit. Talked about Callum. Talked about the Fiddler, Crocus, Apsalar. All those ones. They're the 3 kind of main threads running through it. They probably should be 3 300-page books rather than 1 960-page book. There's absolutely no real good reason to have it as one book, other than to be that kind of modern, multiple threads weaving throughout each other kind of thing. Which I get, it's fashionable and it's the way that fantasy books are written just now. I'm not sure that's for the better. I was struck by the simplicity of the Black Company books when I read them, and how much more enjoyable I felt they were. The reasons why I think those books are superior, and I genuinely do think those books are superior to the Stephen Erickson ones, are mostly to do with their brevity. I think, having a 270, 300-page book that deals with one chunk of time, with one group of people, is far more coherent and easy to sit down and read than a 900-page book which has multiple things going. I mean, I remember when I was reading this book, and it was a couple of weeks ago now, when I was picking it back up again, I'd read a bit at lunchtime, and then I'd pick it back up after everyone else has gone to bed, and I'd be like, "Oh, what happened again?" I stopped at the end of that last chapter, but that was dealing with somebody else, and I've not read these people for a while now, and what was going on? And I found myself having to flick back through the book and go, oh yeah, that's where they stopped. And it makes it, less enjoyable to read and more of a chore to read. And at times this book does become a bit of a chore. There's an awful lot. Well, I mean, if you're going to make this one book and have three different strands through it, I think you could chop a lot out of the book and make it good. If you're going to have it, 3 books of 300 odd pages dealing with 3 different people, the 3 different groups, I think it's a lot better. I think you can leave in the level of detail in the book, and still make them interesting and fun to read. I mean, I get that Steven Eriksson's a world builder. I mean, he's known for building, extremely complicated, interesting, unusual worlds and populating them with unusual and interesting characters. I mean, he's as I said in the last round, he's a GM. He's a GM used to writing his own fantasy settings and writing his own fantasy games. So that comes as a given. I've met plenty of good GMs who can write their own settings to the level that Steven Erikson has. I mean, we all have good ideas. But when that comes down on the page, I don't think it needs to be 900 pages long. Make 3 books of 300 pages and have exactly the same amount of world building in there, and it's much more fun. It's my one bugbear. It's one of the reasons why I've gone from thinking that Steven Erikson was the pinnacle of fantasy at the moment, and I think him and Brandon Sanderson are. I think those two are the two at the top of the game at the moment. To actually having dropped down a little bit because I enjoyed the Glenn Cook books so much, the Black Company ones. I've enjoyed them so much, it's taken a little bit of the shine off the Erikson ones. That might be a good thing, might be a bad thing, but I think it's because of all the good things that I liked in the Black Company were to do with the brevity and his ability to tell a story thanks to that brevity that I found now grating a little bit with Steven Erikson. So yeah, in terms of the books, they're fantastic. The world building in them is amazing. The characters are really interesting. If, like I said last time, completely and utterly OP role-playing characters. I mean, they're hideously overpowered. Callum is essentially just impossible to beat in a straight fight because he's just someone's assassin character, and the type of people who like to play assassin characters. Saying nothing. No criticism on this channel. So yes, like I said, this is going to be a quick review. Should you read this book? Should you read Deadhouse Gates? Yes, for exactly the same reason that you should read Gardens of the Moon and the rest of the Steven Erikson books. They are the forefront of the most modern style of fantasy novel. It's we've come so far from Tolkien, to the incredibly complex language based fairy tale / kind of historical fiction style book that we went through quite a lot. Tolkien was such a big influence, and we went through the likes of the Shannara books, for example. That was the kind of the next big one that took my particular interest. And so I'm looking at my shelves trying to think about the chronology of the last 60 years of fantasy novels. I think that the difference that Steven Erikson has made is not to be understated. He's brought fantasy quite far from... We'd fallen into a bit of a pulp kind of idea, and possibly the likes of the Fantasy Warhammer books had contributed to that. We'd gone very, very pulpy. We'd kind of gone back to the 40s, a little bit of sword and sorcery, hack and slash kind of style, where you were light on characters but heavy on action. And I think what Steven Erikson and Brandon Sanderson and the rest have done is kind of pulled that full circle back to characters, where the characters are the forefront. Interesting characters, complicated characters, and the interesting things that go on around them is secondary to the characters' interactions with each other. Now, what that ends up is with you end up with a character list of thousands of characters, because if the characters are the forefront, you need lots of characters to bounce things off of. This is where Glenn Cook has fallen down. The last book of the Black Company that I read, which was Shadows Linger, I think it was. Its problem was that it actually has a very limited cast, and it's shrinking rather than growing. So as they're going through the books, they're running into the same people over and over and over and over again, and it's actually the same bad guys over and over again, and that's actually, I actually got a little bit annoyed with the last Glenn Cook book for that reason when the reveal happened. Stephen Erickson goes the other way in that he just keeps expanding the cast. You know, by the time you get to the 7th or 8th book in the Maslan series, you know, there's dozens of characters to keep track of and what's going on. And it's a little bit of the is it Gendry in Game of Thrones who rows off in the boat and isn't seen again for another 4 seasons. You know, there's a little bit of that in the Maslan books. You know, everyone has their particular favourite, and if they don't appear for 4 books, you kind of go, come on, I want to get back to Quick Ben or whoever, and you know, that can grate a little bit. And I suppose it would get even worse if you split the books up into 3, because you know, it'd be 12 books before you actually get hold of a character that you like. But I'd prefer to see, you know, him to release 3 books a year at 300 pages than 1 book a year at 900, or 1 book every 18 months at 900. I prefer to see that. I prefer to see slow and steady. But I think this has turned into a little bit of a bugbear with me now. I think it genuinely has, because so many of the fantasy novels I'm picking up are absolute tomes. I mean, the Stephen Erickson's, Brandon Sanderson's going exactly the same way. I'm trying to find the latest Kings one. There we go, Way of the Kings. So let me grab it. Just as an example with Way of the Kings, this is one novel. So there's the Brandon Sanderson one on top, which I said was a tome. So I said this was a tome, 960 pages. And the Brandon Sanderson one is, again, even bigger. That's just over 1,000 pages. You know, and it's not small either, you know. This is a big airport-sized book. And this is what I'm finding with the fantasy novels. They're increasing in size, and they're increasing in complexity, but that's not necessarily meaning it's a better read. I don't get me wrong. I think Brandon Sanderson, I think Stephen Erickson, absolutely brilliant authors. Absolutely brilliant authors, and I love the worlds they've created. They could do with the books being a bit smaller, genuinely. And I'm not saying that because I have to read so many books for this for this charity read. I'm saying it because I think there's an awful lot getting lost by having such big chunky books. Especially to put it into a different perspective, if you're trying to encourage kids to read, and you know, I read fantasy novels from, you know, when I was, you know, that high, all the way up to this high. Handing them a big chunky book like this and say, read that, it's absolutely brilliant. They're going to take one look at it, or they're going to get 20 pages in and go, stuff this for a game of soldiers. I'm not reading that. And I speak as someone who read, you know, likes of Tolkien and Dune, when I was, you know, in primary school still. You know, what you want, you know, this is where things like Julian May, who sadly died recently, and what's her face, who did the Dragon Riders of Pern, the Dragon Riders of Pern books. You know, they are good-sized fantasy novels or science fiction novels. You know, they're not too big. They're 300 pages. They are not necessarily easy reads, but they are good reads, and you can read them in a relatively short space of time. And if you're trying to sell fantasy novels to kids, and we have to, because we have to, you know, keep selling books to kids, otherwise, you know, no one ends up reading books. I think that you need to make them more enticing, and that means, you know, skinnier books. That's the long and short of it. You need both. Genuinely, you need both. But I really, really, really want the kind of the skinnier books. I'm sorry, Ren, 1994. I literally just saw your message there. I was sitting on another tab. I wasn't looking at the chat. I do apologise. I don't know if you're still there or not, but I have just seen your message right there. So yes, the Deadhouse Gates, really, really good book. Really enjoyed it. I've read it before. I mean, this series is absolutely fantastic, and really, really enjoyable. So you should definitely read this. Okay, next review. Next review will be tomorrow. It will be, tomorrow is Friday, so it'll be back into the evening rather than during the day. It is going to be the third part of the Maslan series. It's going to be Memories of Ice. which again I keep getting mixed up with Deadhouse Gates, but that's what it is. Like, this is where it's ridiculous, right? Here is 3 fantasy novels, right? Look at that wodge of book, right there, 3 fantasy novels. And we're supposed to say to kids, or young adults, go away and read those. They're fantastic. They are fantastic, but they're intimidating as hell. We need good authors writing skinny books. That's what we need. That's what we need. So yes, tomorrow will be Memories of Ice. That's going to be the review tomorrow. Already read it. We've got another 3 lined up after this. So yes, that'll be tomorrow. Until tomorrow, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. I'll speak to you all tomorrow. This is a reading for charity, reading for the Archie Foundation. Fantastic charity, helps kids in the northeast of Scotland. It's a really good charity to support. I'm glad we're doing this. Until tomorrow, thank you very much, and good evening.